This is going to be weird, too, trying to find my camera. There it is. Hey, everybody. Breaking the fourth wall. Tim Patrick, I think, is my guy going up against my friends down in Duval County. A lot of opportunity there. With Jerry Jeudy out, who is going to step up? We like Noah Fant, obviously. I think that Tim Patrick gets overlooked a lot, and he's been kind of a that helps no one all-star for the majority of his career, but I think now he's going to get an opportunity to go out and prove himself.
He could help my fantasy teams because I picked him up in a couple of spots. I also like Terrace Marshall Jr. I think he is a name that you could go out and grab off the waiver wire right now. He's a big-time wide receiver there. He had 6 targets, double what Robbie Anderson saw last week. And that was a game where the Panthers were playing against the Jets with a lead throughout. I don't expect them to have a lead throughout in every game, which means more passing opportunities for Marshall and the weapons there.
And I would say, too, go get him right now.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a breakout opportunity for him. It might be too late by next week.
Really? You think he's going to have that big of a game?
You know what? And the thing is, too, is if he didn't get hurt at LSU, he would have been a first-rounder.
Right.
He's as good, and I don't want to say he's better than Justin Jefferson, but he's on par with those guys. He's playing for his former college coordinator. It's too easy. Go get him right now.
It's too easy. And now Sam Darnold really is playing good football.
Yeah.
Amazing, right?
He is, yeah.
Amazing when things can do.
This is not going to be a drag Sam Darnold show.
No, we love Sam Darnold.
Now that I'm in person, I'm not going to allow this to go.
All right, it's time now for 15 for 15, presented by Geico. Let's give the people what they want. Must starts at the quarterback, running back, receiver, and tight end position. We've got the air horns. That's how you know it's
and I'm on
legit.
cue with them.
I know, I like it. All right, so let's erase the chalk, though. Let's go ahead and take a look at the board. Everyone is going to start Patrick Mahomes. We understand that. So, Rank, who are your Week 2 must-start quarterbacks that aren't the so-obvious answers?
Yeah, erasing the chalk. Ryan Tannehill in what should be a high-scoring game up in Seattle. Matt Ryan played really well against Tampa Bay last season. I think those are some pretty good options. But let me say this, and I know I'm wearing a Walter Payton jacket. You got to start Aaron Rodgers this week.
Really?
It gives me no pleasure to say this. Realistically, Aaron Rodgers needs to start. In every regular season loss that he's had, because remember, he was coming off a loss in the NFC Championship game where they got blown out. But in every regular season loss that he's had under Mike LaFleur, over the last 4, he has thrown 4 touchdowns and no picks in each one of those games. Each one, he's thrown for 4 touchdowns. Now he's going up against the Detroit Lions. I think this is an automatic start, so don't panic. Start him this week.
Yeah, and he has played really well against the Lions, especially as of late in his career. Another quarterback I like, and Kimmy, I think you're going to like this one too.
I already know where you're going.
Jameis Winston. He can see now he's got the surgery. He is going to be the first quarterback ever to finish with more touchdowns than passing yards in a season. Not really, but he did throw 5 touchdowns last week, and he gets a better matchup this week against the Panthers. I think he has QB1 upside this week and moving forward in a Sean Payton offense.
You think? No, we know he's going to have QB1-like production. I keep saying it, and I'm going to say it every single week. I think he is a dark horse candidate for MVP. So I love Jameis Winston. Also love the Aaron Rodgers. And the fact that you said it while wearing a Bears
I got to be
shirt.
honest. I got to be honest.
It's amazing. All right, so those were some must-start quarterbacks. Florio, what about some running backs? Not so obvious names. No Christian McCaffrey right here, okay?
Yeah, I mean, Nick Chubb might seem a little obvious, but I think he's going to have a great game today. David Montgomery, Jonathan Taylor, I think he's another one. People might be scared by the matchup, but he's awesome. Chris Carson. And Najee Harris is one that I really want to focus on, though. He didn't give us the production last week, but the usage was there. He did not leave the field. He played 100% of the snaps, ran routes on 74% of their passing plays, had the 17 touches. The usage was what we wanted, and now he gets a much better matchup against a Raiders team that you can run on. He is a must-start option for me this week.
Yeah, you got to love the usage. I don't know why people were upset about that. And if Ben Roethlisberger had led him on that target near the goal line, he would have been awesome last week. But I want to go back to Melvin Gordon. And I know that earlier in the show I talked about how I want to start Elijah Mitchell over him. That doesn't mean that I don't like Melvin Gordon. So allow me to go back there and say Melvin Gordon is going to be fine. Great matchup against our friends down in Duval County. Again, this is not going to be a drag Duval County show by any stretch of the imagination. Not after Tony Khan has delivered us Bryan Danielson, CM Punk. Like, there's no way.
Right.
But
wrestling reference number 1. We got
there
that one.
But Gordon, Javonte Williams, Tim Patrick, these guys, they're all startable this week.
Ooh, even Javonte Williams.
Absolutely, Javonte Williams.
We're not worried about that week 1.
He actually outsnapped him.
He did.
So I think that it's just a matter of time before Javonte Williams just becomes the guy.
All right, so those were the running backs. Rank, back to you. Wide receivers, must starts, not so obvious names. Week 2, go.
Well, I'm going to go with Chris Godwin, Calvin Ridley, Jamar Chase. Even though Jamar Chase is on this board, I really like Tyler Boyd as well. I think all 3 of the Bengals receivers are in play. Last week, Cooper Kupp playing out of the slot really tore up the Bears. Like the ghost of Chris Conte was there. But Calvin Ridley is one that is very interesting to me. I know a lot of people look at this matchup against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and they're like, I don't want any part of this. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're the defending Super Bowl champions. But they've given up a lot of production to opposing wide receivers. Last year, when the Falcons played them in weeks 15 and 17, Calvin Ridley did really well against them. So I think I have no hesitation getting him into the lineup today.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. I also like Mike Williams a lot from your list, Rank. He led them in routes last week. He had 12 targets. He finished as a top 15 wide receiver in a tough matchup. Now he gets the Cowboys in what could be one of the highest scoring games of the week. I'm excited to start Mike Williams this week.
And you would think Diggs would be on Keenan Allen.
He could be. I think he's going to switch off between the 2 of them.
I'd start both those guys, though.
Me too.
Start them all. And guess what? The game is just next door, so we can walk from the studio to SoFi
we have a
Stadium.
tunnel to SoFi? Can we just walk over there?
After the show, let's go discover. All right, so you guys know I went into tight end university. That's what I like to call it. University of Iowa, so I'm pumped about this one, Florio. Your week 2 must-start tight ends.
Yeah, I like Mark Andrews in a bounce-back effort. Noah Fant, I think, getting more volume with no Jerry Jeudy there. Higbee last week was getting a lot of usage. I think you got to be excited about him. And then we saw what Gronk did last week. He's got a great matchup now. But Kyle Pitts against the Bucs is one that I want to focus on. Just like Najee Harris, Pitts didn't have the results last week, but the usage that we wanted was there for him. He had 8 targets, tied with Calvin Ridley for a team lead, and then he was lining up in the slot, out wide, and as a traditional tight end, which is what we were hoping for all summer. One game, in his first NFL game, doesn't make this guy not a unicorn. Get him in your lineup this week.
Yeah, I would never waiver on Kyle Pitts, and I would never waiver on Rob Gronkowski either. I think that he's not going to go out there every week and give you 8 for 8, 90, and a pair of touchdowns. But again, I think that he's such a rock-solid option. And you look at the lack of depth at the tight end position, Rob Gronkowski is a must-start every week.
Plus, he's fun. You like to root for
fun
fun guys
fun players.
In fantasy football. All right, guys, coming up next on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico, we're sliding into some fantasy DMs. That actually does not mean messages. That means are definitely must-starts. Do not get it twisted here. No DMs coming my way. So stick with us here on NFL Fantasy Game Day. Let's take a look at some players getting warmed up and ready. Week 2 of action. Who's it going to be? Ooh. All right, we tie in the shoes, tie in the cleats. What's up, Cooper Kupp? Looking to have a monster game yet again this week. Lining up really well in the slot with Matthew Stafford. Oh, all right, Darren Waller, the baller, tight end number 2 in fantasy football last week. More to come. Stick with us on NFL Fantasy Game Day. There he is, Bill Belichick's new son, Mac Jones. I still am thinking about his walk when he got drafted. The confident walk up to the stage, looking to get the start today against the Jets. What about the quarterback on the other side of that game? The other new son of football, Zach Wilson, looking to make a good debut and get a win against Mac Jones and the Patriots. The young guys, the kids are all right, right, Adam Rank? The kids are all right. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day.
Led Zeppelin?
Stop. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day presented by Geico. I'm Kimmy Chex, who doesn't know any of Adam Rank's references. That's Adam Rank, and that is Michael F. Florio, who's young like me and probably does get the references.
Listen, first of all, I wasn't alive when John Adams was president, but I know he's the second president of the United States.
I didn't.
You should know things.
Okay, I'm so sorry I did not know who's saying the kids are all right, but the kids are all right. Zach Wilson and the other rookies to be exact.
CSI New York.
We know that you guys have questions. Don't forget to send them in at NFL Fantasy or comment on the YouTube section. Here's the very first one. Frank, this is coming. Oh, no, excuse me, Florio. This is coming directly to you. Derek wants to know, if you've got time, Chase Claypool or Antonio Brown in my flex PPR league.
I'm going with Antonio Brown there. Big time usage last week. We saw him. He has a great matchup against the Falcons. I expect better from Claypool, but I have Antonio Brown significantly higher.
Ooh, all right, Derek. Antonio Brown. All right, let's take a look at our next one. Rank, this one will go for you. Let's wait 2 seconds. And we'll see who it is. Stand by. Make sure, again, you're sending your questions at NFL Fantasy. All right, Keith wants to know, Debo or Elijah Mitchell in the flex in a PPR league? This is a good one.
I still go with Elijah Mitchell. I have a lot of confidence in this one. To me, it reminds me, I know a lot of people are upset about, Shanahan running backs, but remember Freddie Morris, when he played for his dad, Mike Shanahan, did pretty well. It reminds me of that situation.
Okay, I love it. Let's take a look at one other one. Do we have another fan question? Yes, no, maybe so. Let's see. Florio, this one's going to go back to you. All right, he wants to know, MVS, Tim Patrick, Russell Gage, or Brandon Ayuk? I only need 2 of them.
I'm going to go with Tim Patrick here. I expect more volume for him. And then I would take the upside shot on Brandon Ayuk. Russell Gage just had 2 targets last week, so I would play the upside play there.
What about MVS, though? I kind of feel like you have a Monday night receiver. You have Aaron Rodgers, what we talked about before about having 4 touchdowns in every preceding every last 4 losses.
Yep.
I think MVS is kind of a fun play. That's me, though. I'm crazy.
Angry Rodgers. I mean, we could get a deep shot or 2 to MVS. That's all it takes.
That's all it takes for you to bring home some fantasy gold and hopefully give one of you guys a win. All right, it's time to turn it to a new segment that we are calling Fantasy DMs, which does not mean harassing us in our DMs. It actually means these are definitely must-starts. These are players that you want to have on your roster, so get your burner phones ready. Adam Rank, whose DMs are you sliding into?
I'm going to go with Harris right here, Damian Harris, and I think that this is a pretty good start. I thought that, a lot of people like to avoid New England Patriot running backs. Like, I don't want any part of that mess. And then the dude went out there and had like 25 touches last week. Was that not good enough for you? And then he went out, and if you look at this Jets team, last week Christian McCaffrey had 187 total scrimmage yards. He killed it. And so I think that this week, I know he's not CMC, but he's still got a great opportunity. So I'm firing up Damian Harris for sure.
And I know we had some concerns if he would lose touches after the fumble. It doesn't look like that is the case. I would be starting Kareem Hunt anywhere I drafted him this year. Great matchup against the Texans. I expect the Browns to utilize their running backs a ton in this game. They played the Texans last year, and Hunt went for over 130 yards. And this Texans defense lost pieces that they had last season. I think both of these Browns running backs has a huge game. Start them both.
All right, Adam Rank, you mentioned this guy's name earlier, and I'm not just hyping you up or jumping on your hype train, but I truly believe that Aaron Rodgers is going to be elite. I'm not worried about that week 1 snafu against the Saints and how bad he was. It's fine. We keep talking about petty Aaron Rodgers is very good Aaron Rodgers, and he has one of the most favorable matchups at the quarterback position this week, going up against the Lions. The Lions have given up the most fantasy points to quarterbacks since week 9 of the 2020 season. So if there's ever a chance for Aaron Rodgers to redeem himself and not be riding our bench, it's for week 2 going up against the Lions today. So I love him.
Could not be set up any better for him. And I also love the setup for Tyler Lockett this week. This was a player that we talked about in the preseason during the draft shows where I'm like, I don't understand why people don't pay more attention to Tyler Lockett. I know that he's not the big physically imposing threat that DK Metcalf is, but Tyler Lockett gets all the end zone opportunities, and he also does stuff like this. Look at that. Look at that move he just put on it. You don't think he can do that to the Titans this week? I'm starting him. I have no hesitation. Tyler Lockett is going to be a league winner this season.
I love that call. I have Tyler Lockett in a few leagues. I'm starting him with confidence. I'm also starting Deebo Samuel everywhere I have him. We had concerns what it would look like with him and Ayuk and George Kittle. Well, if week 1 was any indication, it's going to be a lot of Deebo Samuel. He had a 48% target share. The only other player that even had anywhere close to that was Tyreek Hill. So he is in elite company. I like Deebo Samuel a lot. It's a good matchup for him too this week. So I would be starting him anywhere I have him.
Rank, I know you talked about this guy just seconds ago, but I want to double down on Damian Harris because I get a lot of questions about it, and I truly believe that the volume is there because I think the reason why I really kind of want to emphasize this point is that for so long we've been told to avoid the backfield for the New England
Patriots.
Those
are the scared people.
You don't want to deal with that. But now Damian Harris has the volume. Guess what? Cam Newton is not there to steal the goal line carries or to rush the ball. So Damian Harris has the opportunity, plus the matchup is there. The Jets just gave up over 30 fantasy points, I believe, last week in week 1 to the running back position. So, yes, he's not going to be a pass-catching running back, but he's actually going to rush the ball, and it's okay. So we don't need to panic on the Patriots' run game anymore, right?
Not at all. Although, is J.J. Taylor active? I should have looked.
He might be.
He probably is. He'll probably end up scoring 2 touchdowns.
I know.
Some rando's going to score 2 touchdowns this week.
And then we'll say, and that helps no one.
This is why we do this.
This is why we do this. All right, next on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico, it is time to outsmart your competition. We are giving you our list of players you shouldn't sleep on today. Fantasy Sleepers is coming up next. Stick with us. Matthew Stafford looking to take on the Indianapolis Colts today. A lot of pressure for Matthew Stafford. Everyone's saying the Rams are going to the Super Bowl. They're going to be the second team in a row to host their own Super Bowl. Stafford looking good in week 1.
Well,
Jimmy G, your guy.
Well, I was going to say, how did the Rams go from those awesome uniforms in week 1 to what they were just wearing currently? But the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo, handsome quarterback, handsome uniform.
And a big question, are we going to see Trey Lance today? Big
I
question.
don't know if he'll play, but we'll see him.
We'll see him. We will see him on the
We'll
sideline.
show him on the sideline at least.
Thank you for that one. Fantasy managers, though, excited to get him on the field at some point. Welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico. Again, I'm your host, Kimmy Chex, alongside Adam Rank and Michael Florio. Gentlemen, let's take a look again at the notable actives and inactives. The big name here, Josh Jacobs. He will not be playing today. Neither will OBJ. No surprise there. Will Fuller is out. So is Jamison Crowder. Active is Darnell Mooney, Adam Rank's favorite sleeper. Michael Pittman Jr. and Jonnu Smith if you need a tight end, because we all know tight ends, dumpster fire.
A little bit.
Dumpster fire, as always. So please make sure that you stay tuned and you are getting those guys who are inactive off of your roster and onto your bench so that you can skate your way into a fantasy championship, but 1 week at a time. It's only week 2. I've already given up on one of my teams. I'm like, you know what? It's a dumpster fire. Now, speaking of fire, if you can't take the heat, well, you know, it's time now for burning questions. These are questions that people need to have answers to.
The answer.
We have 30 minutes to set lineups before week 2 kicks off, and some people want to win their matchups. Are you guys ready?
Ready.
Very first question. I'm getting jazzed because I like this question. First question, is Jameis Winston for real? Are you on the Jameis Winston hype train, Rank?
You know what? I had him as a sit this week, and then as luck would have it, I had to go onto one of my waiver wires, and I'm like, I got to play Jameis Winston. And I think that there's reasons to believe that he's real. There's a lot of good quarterbacks, though, and we're not in the bye weeks, so I wouldn't start him over Ryan Tannehill, for instance, who had a bad week 1. I wouldn't start him over Aaron Rodgers. But I think he's somebody who should be rostered, and he might end up being a starter for you week to week.
Yeah, I have him just outside the top 12 this week. I like the matchup for him. I would be playing him unless you have like a Tannehill or someone like that. Then you're going with the guy that you drafted.
What about Matt Ryan?
I would go with Winston over Matt Ryan this week.
I'm going to do it. All right.
Oh, really? I had a really interesting conundrum, and I kept my main quarterback starting, but Jameis Winston, I have a situation where Dak Prescott is my starting quarterback, and I grabbed Jameis Winston as my QB2. And with kind of all these concerns on the O-line and on the defensive side of the ball for the Cowboys this week, part of me was like, do I do that? And I didn't, but I was really smart and tried to grab Winston as much as I can in leagues as my QB2, because even if I don't need him, I want to make sure that I hoard him so that no one else, none of you fools can get him, because we do play each other in fantasy, and I want to make sure that I beat both of you. All right, next burning question is Christian McCaffrey, the GOAT of fantasy football, right? One of the greatest fantasy running backs we've ever seen. He's healthy. He had an incredible week 1, which is to be no surprise, but now he's back on week 2. So is he as automatic as they say he is? Is he going to continue to have double-digit fantasy points in every single game that he suits up for?
Yes. Yeah, he will.
That was easy.
The Saints defense is the toughest run them and the Bucs are the top 2 run defenses in the league, and we saw them neutralize Aaron Jones last week. But Christian McCaffrey is the biggest cheat code, I think, in fantasy history. Not only does he give you RB1 numbers, even if the Saints take him out of the running game today, he gives you wide receiver numbers as well. So you could expect close to 10 catches from him this week. I still have him ranked as the overall RB1 despite the tough matchup.
Yeah, and it was interesting going back to those conversations that we had in the summer when people were like, do we draft him? What are we going to do with him? Like, yeah, you should probably draft him. Turns out he's pretty good.
He's pretty good.
I know, but it kind of makes sense because people had the same questions about Saquon Barkley. It's different, but I understand people saying, oh, you have a season-ending injury. Right. You're not going to play for a prolonged amount of time. But Christian McCaffrey was still like the consensus number 1 pick in fantasy.
Saquon was out for the entire year. McCaffrey was like every week, like, I think he's coming back. And you're like, okay, cool. It's like, oh, no way, he's inactive.
Because they just wanted to rest him.
Yeah.
And now he's great. And you guys both buy into that. Our burning question.
I'm in.
10 straight games where he has over 20 fantasy points.
Make it 11.
We're going to make it 11. I like it. Florio, very excited. All right, it's time now for Fantasy Insurance presented by Geico. These are the moves that can make or break a fantasy lineup. But when they hit, it's so good. We're talking sleepers, Adam Ranks. To start us off, the guys that we're sleeping on, we're not having our eye on them, but they're going to get in the lineup and they're going to be a beast for fantasy football.
Kim, I was shocked that when we showed the waiver wire board earlier that Nyheim Hines was on it. Like, who's not picking up Nyheim Hines?
Available in over 50% of NFL.com
It's crazy
leagues.
to me. Like, why are we doing this? Like, I honestly believe that he is their best pass catcher on that team right now. Last week, him and Jonathan Taylor were getting more targets than Michael Pittman. And everybody wanted to pick up Michael Pittman, trying to make him a sleeper this offseason. But it's Nyheim Hines. Last year, he had the third most receptions of any running back. So if he's still available to you, start him. And this week is a great matchup against the Rams.
Yeah, the belief was maybe last season was because of Phillip Rivers, but they were the top 2 targets, again, the running backs. I like Chase Edmonds, similar style running back, of one that could catch passes out of the backfield. He was used a lot early on last week, and then when the Cardinals were playing with the lead in the fourth quarter, that's when they really turned to James Conner. I think this could be another game where it's a little bit higher scoring, and they're going to need Chase Edmonds early on. He could catch some passes out of the backfield. Now we just got to hope that they use him in the red zone, because that is where they went to Conner last week.
Yeah, that's the big hope. That's kind of why I stayed away from Chase Edmonds, but why I would instead of rather have had Kareem Hunt coming into this season. And again, when we're talking about the pass catchers for the Cleveland Browns, Jarvis Landry's amazing. With Odell Beckham Jr. out, I think that Hunt is their second best wide receiver. And in a game where you expect the Browns to be scoring a lot of points. I know last week the Texans looked great against Jacksonville. Cleveland is going to go out there and really beat this team. I had to be honest.
Yeah, I love the Browns running backs this week. Rank, you might like this one.
I'm not going to like this.
Andy Dalton, does he have a little bit of sleeper appeal in a revenge game against the Bengals defense that allowed a lot last week?
We're trying to get Justin Fields to be a thing.
I want Justin Fields, as excited as I am to get Justin Fields in there.
It doesn't feel like it.
Andy Dalton might have a little bit of revenge today against his old team.
My goodness gracious. Throw the ball down the field then.
We just need to get a red toupee and just smack it on Adam Rank. If Andy Dalton can pull off a win, I swear I'm going to find a red wig and you are going to wear it next
He does
Sunday.
have nice hair.
Is that okay?
He's a nice person.
I know, but
I like Andy Dalton as a human being.
But
I don't want him to start at quarterback for the Chicago Bears. Like, I love my son, my 3-year-old, delightful human being. I don't want him to be the starting quarterback of the Bears.
okay.
Is that fair?
It's very fair. It's very fair. Coming up next on NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico, it's one of the toughest lineup decisions every single week. Who to flex, but don't sweat because we've got you coming up next. Derek Carr, again, looking good. That was one of the most exciting games. Every single game we've seen in prime time this season has been great. Looking to take on the Steelers. Make sure you stick with us here on NFL Fantasy Game Day.
Murray. The Cardinals are blowing out the Titans. He's got it. Touchdown. Another for Winston.
The Bengals win it on the final play of overtime.
70 yards for Melvin Gordon.
A big win for Miami. The Pittsburgh Steelers invade Buffalo.
The Philadelphia Eagles rout the Falcons. Sam Darnold gets some revenge against the Jets. Touchdown, LA!
Carson Wentz, new uniform, new opportunity. He's healthy, and he's looking to get a win today. How do you guys feel about Carson Wentz?
You know what? I love that Paris Campbell would not give him the number 11. Or is it Pittman? Pittman. Pittman's like, nah, dude. I'm Michael Pittman. You can't have my number.
Wentz and Julio both went the same route. They couldn't get 11, so they just added 1 + 1 and went with number 2.
Ooh, smart. Oreo. All right, welcome back to NFL Fantasy Game Day, presented by Geico. Again, I'm your host, Kimmy Checks. That guy right there is Michael F. Florio. This man right here is Andy Dalton. Just kidding, it's Adam Rank. We know that you want Justin Fields to be the starting quarterback.
We like Andy Dalton.
I know,
Nice
it's all right.
human being.
All right, as a reminder, don't forget to send us your burning questions at NFL Fantasy, or go to the YouTube section and comment your questions, and we have our researcher extraordinaire, Matt Okada, there to answer all of them. We want to make sure that you guys are able to win your fantasy matchups this week. It's week 2. We're in studio. We're here. There's a game kicking off at SoFi in just a few minutes, but it's time to talk about some flex starts, because that's a position on fantasy rosters that a lot of people get confused about on a week-to-week basis. So, Adam Rank, coming to you first. Flex starts. What's some advice for some fantasy managers out there?
I know a lot of people picked up Tyson Williams, and they used him against the Raiders, and he was pretty good. I think you keep rolling with him against the Kansas City Chiefs. One of the things that you can do against the Chiefs is gain some yards on the ground. We saw it last week with Cleveland, and obviously the Baltimore Ravens love to run the football. Over the last number of years, I don't think anybody has run the ball as much as Baltimore has. So if you got Williams, I think you still continue to roll with him.
I am flexing him myself in a couple of leagues, so I am hoping that you are right, Rank. I would say flex Antonio Brown this week. He had big-time usage last week. He had the most yards of all the Bucs receivers, so you like to see him be such a big part of their offense, and then the matchup is amazing. He gets the Falcons this week, who have allowed the most fantasy points to receivers since last year, so I think AB is going to have a big day once again this week.
I was there at kickoff down in Tampa, and watching that game and seeing his usage in that first week and understanding his relationship with Tom Brady, I think Antonio Brown actually has a pretty dominant fantasy season this year. So exciting things if you're a fantasy manager who swooped him up. Gentlemen, it is time now for Who Scores, presented by DraftKings Sportsbooks. So let's talk about some of the biggest names in fantasy and what we're going to expect from them today, week 2, Sunday, today. So last week versus the Tennessee Titans, Kyler Murray, he put on a show. And you guys even predicted that he was going to be the top quarterback in fantasy football, and then you were right. So the big question is, will Kyler Murray have another 5-touchdown day versus the Vikings?
5 touchdowns, that's a lot.
It's a ton.
You're asking a lot. Like, then if we tell somebody this, yes, and Kyler Murray goes out there and has 4 touchdowns, which again would be an amazing day, then everybody gets mad at us. They're like, oh, thanks, clown. You said 5 touchdowns. He scored just 4. He only scored 29 fantasy points for me. But if there is a guy who I think that could rebound and do that again, I think it's going to be Kyler Murray.
Ooh, Florio. So DraftKings thinks that it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game because the line is 50.5 points. So, Florio, what are your fantasy projections for Kyler Murray specifically?
I have him projected for just around 29 fantasy points. I think that he could have another huge day. This is a good matchup. I think a lot of points will be scored in this one. And Kyler, we saw it last week. He is just like a video game. Like, you can't bring this guy down. I have him once again ranked as the top quarterback heading into week 2.
Kyler Murray's like full Madden. I was watching him. I was like, this is like cheat code Madden football. I like it. Thank you, Kyler Murray. If only I would have drafted you, because I didn't think you were going to be that good. I know. That's on me, though. All right, next up, Ezekiel Elliott. Well, he was held in check during week 1, but the play calling, that was the reason why. He only rushed the ball 11 times for 33 yards. So, Florio, I know you love the Dallas Cowboys and some of those playmakers. Should Zeke managers love this matchup against the Chargers today?
Yeah, they should. I mean, is Zeke playing the Bucks again this week? He is not.
Wait, no, he's not.
I do not expect him to be held for less than 50 yards and less than 6 fantasy points. I think he has a big bounce-back week and reminds everyone why we were drafting him in the first round coming into the season.
All right, DraftKings thinking that he has the over-under on Zeke's rush yards at 58.5. So, Adam, rank fantasy projections for Zeke specifically.
I think he can get really close to 100 combined yards going into this game, and I think that he's good for probably about 3 receptions as well. So I think that works out to about 20 fantasy points if he scores a touchdown as well. So I think this is going to be a pretty good game for him. I think, again, Zach Martin's back.
Yep.
You're not playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody was freaking out about it. I think that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be just fine.
And that's kind of the theme across a lot of running backs in that first week. Some other first rounders and some other running backs who we drafted really high, hoping to be really good. They had some tough matchups. And this is the reason where it's week 1. We had a very small sample size.
Longest
and now
season
it's
ever.
week 2. We have the longest season ever. And it's okay.
Wait,
so
what?
don't I know. I know you've never heard that, but this is the longest
Why
season
didn't
ever.
they tell us that?
I know. I guess they didn't brief you when you walked in the room. All right, so week 2 of the NFL season is here, and the excitement continues with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. DraftKings is giving all new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. Bet just $1 on any football game this weekend and receive $200 in free bets instantly, no matter what. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code WHOSCORES to receive $200 in free bets when you place $1 bet on any Week 2 game. Some more warm-ups. Ben Roethlisberger, Big Ben, looking to be healthy again.
He shaved his beard, so apparently he's svelte.
Apparently he's good. Stick with us on Fantasy Game Day. Welcome back into Fantasy Game Day. That right there is the fantasy darling, right? Jalen Hurts looking to get warmed up and ready. He started 4 games last season, and he was incredible in fantasy. We said, is this a fever dream, or is he actually going to be good again? And then he had a monster week 1 game, and hopefully he has another monster game today. We love it. Jalen Hurts, I love you. I'm so happy I drafted you in fantasy. It's time now for 15 minutes to kick off, presented by Geico. As a reminder, these were our notable actives and inactives. The big name here, Josh Jacobs, he is out, as well as Odell Beckham Jr., Jamison Crowder, and Will Fuller. But we've got some other actives, Darnell Mooney, Michael Pittman Jr., and Jonnu Smith if you need some tight end help. All right, all show long we've been saying, send in your questions. We're here to answer them. And now it's time to actually answer some questions.
Kidding?
No, we're not kidding. It's 15 minutes to kick off. People are scrambling, trying to get their lineups ready to go. So let's go to some fan questions. Adam Rank, I'm going to give you the first one here.
All right.
And see what it is. Let's bring some spice. What's it going to be?
That's good. I thought it was just a line.
Ooh. Even though they tweeted at Florio, I'll give this one to you first. Florio's
sure?
like the most popular guy on Twitter. All right, in the flex spot, DeAndre Swift, Jarvis, Marvin Jones. Ooh, flex.
I'm thinking still Swift.
Yeah,
Go
agree.
Swift. Yeah, even against the Green Bay Packers. I think you're comfortable going with DeAndre Swift.
I'm starting him this week. I feel good about it.
I mean, he had 11 targets last
He
week.
He rushed 11 times and 11 targets, so the volume is clearly there.
wish.
Hey, I know. I need a wishbone. All right, let's take a look at the next one. Dr. Ben Franklin, PhD. We're going to rock with DeAndre Swift. Florio, again, the most popular guy on Twitter. Sam Darnold or Derek Carr? Laughing face emoji. Sorry, whoever's Twitter this is. That's quite the predicament.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Both quarterbacks on tough matchups. I'm leaning a little bit towards Sam Darnold just because I like the pieces around him better, but both of these are tough options in tough matchups.
Gotcha, yeah. I like Darnold a little bit, though.
Do you?
I really do. I know
do?
the Saints played fine. The Saints played fine last week.
The Saints
Don't
were
get
good.
mad at me.
The Saints were good. All right, Rank, this one coming back around to you. Oscar wants to know, should I start Jameis Winston over Lamar Jackson this week? That's wild, but I like it.
Yeah, you should totally do that. I'm
think?
kidding. No, don't do that.
You're not worried about the matchup for Lamar Jackson against the Chiefs?
No.
Really?
Lamar Jackson's going to be fine. Again, this is going to be one of the higher scoring games of the weekend, the Chiefs and the Ravens. So I feel very comfortable going with Lamar Jackson.
Ooh, okay. But Oscar, shout out to you for having both Lamar Jackson and Jameis Winston on your fantasy roster.
It's too early for overthinking, Oscar.
Is it?
A little bit.
I mean, yeah, I just said that about the running back situation. I said, don't panic. It was just week 1. Did you just hear that air horn? That means it's time for Sunday Fun Day. We are going to predict today's top scorer. So let's get out our fantasy crystal ball and predict. Who's it going to be? Fantasy top scorer, week 2. It's Sunday. We're feeling good. We're in the studio. There's football.
I'm going to go with Kyler Murray. Again,
So
I know.
obvious.
Again, well, this is an obvious segment. Like, who's going to be the top scorer? Kyler Murray. I think, obviously, what we said previously about him scoring 5 touchdowns, that's not a reasonable expectation week in and week out, but I think this is a very good matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. I know that the Viking fans tried to tell me during the offseason, we have the most complete roster in the NFL. It's like, yeah, you guys lost to the Bengals in week 1, so let's slow your roll a little bit. Kyler Murray looked fantastic against a team in Tennessee that had actually improved during the offseason. So I feel very comfortable saying that Kyler Murray will be the top scorer.
Yeah, I said earlier I had him ranked as my QB1. If it is not Kyler Murray, I think it'll be the man that I have ranked as my QB2.
Oh, Homer pick.
Josh Allen. I think he has a bounce-back game this week, and the whole reason I like Allen is because he has dominated Miami throughout his entire NFL career. He's averaging over 25 fantasy points against them, has scored over 33 in half of his career games against them, including multiple passing touchdowns every single time he's faced them. Big bounce-back week coming for Allen, I think. If it's not Murray, I think it's Josh.
Are you guys not remembering what's happening next door? And just a little bit?
What's going on?
It's the Los Angeles Chargers
Clippers?
taking on the Dallas Cowboys. Does no one else like Justin Herbert and think he's going to be incredible? He had a very don't even get me started. He had a very tough week 1 matchup against the Washington football team. And he still put up good numbers. He did. And then look at what's happening.
Arguing with you.
I just want to argue. He's playing the Dallas Cowboys today at home. This is a debut at SoFi Stadium. It's a home home game for Justin Herbert.
It is?
He was a Rookie of the Year. He wants to be in front of his fans. And the Dallas defense, well, they're banged up. They're not doing so hot. They are missing their main defensive end, so you know what's going to happen. They just announced that they're putting Micah Parsons in to play D end. And though I think Micah Parsons is incredible, and that's why he was drafted in the first round, he's not a defensive end. So I think Justin Herbert has an opportunity to show off at home in front of his fans, stunt a little bit, and be a surprising top scorer. Why are you laughing at me?
You're such a Gen Z person.
How?
Because you're like, because we didn't say Justin Herbert, you're like, you automatically hate him. Oh, you guys, so you guys obviously don't like Justin. I'm like, no, I just like Kyler Murray more. It doesn't mean that I don't like Justin Herbert.
I think you just called me a snowflake. All right, so we all gave quarterbacks that we think will be top scorers, but who are our must-start quarterbacks, Adam Rank?
I would say Jalen Hurts. And again, we talked about how much we liked him at the end of last season, and he pretty much lived up to expectations. And then coming into this year, people are like, I hope the Eagles draft a quarterback. Like, why? So he can sit the bench? And even when they traded for Gardner Minshew, people were freaking out. But I think that once he goes out this week and has a great game against the San Francisco 49ers, we can now put it to rest, and that Jalen Hurts will be considered a must-start each and every week.
I agree. And, Kimmy, I think you're going to like this pick because I'm saying must-start Justin Herbert.
Yes,
thank
you. Thank you. Someone understands me. Someone here understands
I get it
me.
now.
He threw for over 300 yards last week against Washington in a tough matchup. Now he gets the Cowboys in a game that I think they're going to need to score a lot of points to keep up with Dak and them. Start Justin Herbert this week.
I love this guy. Let's get him. Let's give a round of applause to Florio for agreeing with me on Justin Herbert. All right. I love Matthew Stafford this week. Again, I mentioned it earlier. Kind of the preseason chatter and the preseason hype here is Matthew Stafford's now going to take the Rams to the Super Bowl. And I guess if that happens, that means good things for my fantasy squad. But looking at this matchup specifically today against the Colts defense in week 1, they weren't great against Russell Wilson. They allowed 254 passing yards and 4 passing touchdowns to Russell last week. I'm pretty sure in the Rams film room, they were looking at what Russell did and said, let's just duplicate that. Let's just get Cooper Kupp in the slot and make sure that Matthew Stafford can feast and have a huge game. So Matthew Stafford, my must-start, new team, and now he's just fantasy gold.
He plays right next door, too.
And he plays next door, too. We got all the stars right next door. Y'all got to come down. All right, we talked about the quarterbacks, but let's talk about the running backs. We understand those are pretty darn important in fantasy football. So a must-start running back for you, Rank.
Elijah Mitchell. And I think if you're one of those fantasy managers who spent 100% of their fab budget on Elijah Mitchell, so I was in a league where that absolutely happened.
Same.
You got to get him out there. If you have a player like this, you let him go. Unless you're Matt Nagy and want to slow play your fantasy team. Like, you would be the fantasy Matt Nagy if you did not play Elijah Mitchell this week. Play him against this Eagles team. I know that they were good last week against the Atlanta Falcons, but the Falcons have trouble and have issues on the offensive line. They have a brand new head coach. This is Kyle Shanahan. This is a Kyle Shanahan offense. Start Elijah Mitchell and don't even think twice about it.
Yeah, if you picked him up and you spent all that fab, you got to be getting him in your lineup. Another player that I've been getting questions like, should I sit him this week, is Najee Harris. And I'm saying no, not at all. I think he is a must-start option. He played 100% of the Steelers' snaps last week. He did not come off the field once. He was running a bunch of routes for them. He had the 17 touches, which you love to see. He had a workhorse usage in week 1. It was just not the greatest game for him. A good matchup this week against the Raiders that they can be ran on. We saw last week with Baltimore. I think Harris is going to have a much better game this week.
But somebody on Twitter was like, I didn't like his vision. And they didn't. I'm like, okay, thank you, Gil Brandt. Like, what do you, like, stop it. Like, no, it wasn't. No, they weren't Gil Brandt.
I was going to say, shots fired early on.
If it was Gil, I would pay attention to it.
I love DeAndre Swift. I know we kind of mentioned him earlier. I think the reason why you like Najee Harris and even Elijah Mitchell is because of the volume. And if you talk about volume for DeAndre Swift, it's there not only as a running back, but as a pass catcher as well. He was targeted 11 times. He also had 11 rushes. And his matchup today against the Green Bay Packers is pretty favorable, right? If you look at what the defense on the Packers did last season, I believe they were 4th worst against fantasy running backs. So
terrible,
the volume's there. The defensive opportunity is there for him to run straight through it. And I really like DeAndre Swift. I know we said that we felt comfortable getting him in the flex spot, but if you have him, I wouldn't press panic. I would get him into your lineup. So those are the running backs. Must start wide receivers. Adam Rink.
I'm going to go with DJ Moore.
Okay.
And I think this is a player who I really like. It's never quite worked out with me, fantasy-wise. Like, we had a bad relationship last last year.
You
We
guys
just
did.
We had to go our own way. Like, I used to have a friend that was like the nicest guy, but like I almost broke his hand moving a fridge and like a lot of mishaps. And I'm like, I understand why you don't want to hang out with me anymore. I think DJ Moore and I were kind of like in a similar situation, but last week he was fantastic against the Jets. And then I thought at first, like, should we start him against the Saints? He was great against them last year, excuse me. Great point totals against the Saints in 2020, so I continue that momentum into this year.
I have a couple leagues with him myself, and I am starting him. Another player that I would be starting this week, and I know you agree, Rank, it's Tyler Lockett. I mean, This guy had himself a day last week on just 5 targets, and I'm thinking Seattle might have to throw the ball more this week against the Titans. I think the Titans' offense is going to look a lot better than they did last week, which leads to more passes for Seattle. Lockett is just underrated in fantasy, like you said, Rank. If he gets more volume this week, we know he's going to get a couple of deep shots. Maybe he could even find the end zone again. If you drafted Tyler Lockett, you have to start him this week.
Love Tyler Lockett. Always love Tyler Lockett. We forget about him because of DK Metcalf, but I completely agree. Florio must start this week. Let's talk about a guy who's actually going to be facing that Seattle defense. I like A.J. Brown, and I don't want to think too much about week 1 because Chandler Jones just completely obliterated any passing game that the Titans wanted to have. But A.J. Brown is still an incredible option. And again, Julio Jones is now in that offense, but A.J. Brown in week 1 was still the most targeted player for the Tennessee Titans, and that's the thing that we want. The volume and the opportunities are going to be there. Seattle, not so great against fantasy wideouts, so I think that they're looking for a bounce-back game from Chandler Jones, completely stuffing them. So those are our must-start wideouts. Tight ends, very quickly, Adam Rank, must-start tight end with a great matchup this week.
I'm going to go with Tyler Higbee. Last week, the Seattle Seahawks had some great success with Gerald Everett. I think the Rams also want to start featuring Tyler Higbee a little bit as well. And you know what's funny, as well as the Rams played last week, they didn't get a lot of snaps. Like, they had big plays. They didn't have a lot of drives, sustained drives. I think that'll change this week, and I think it'll mean big production for Tyler Higbee.
You have to love the usage Higbee saw in week 1. And Kimmy, you have to love this guy, Noah Fant, a personal friend of yours.
Biggest smile on my face right now.
I think he is a must-start tight end. It was him and Jerry Jeudy early in the game that were the top targets for the Broncos last week. And then once Jeudy went down, the offense was, the passing game at least, was running through Noah Fant. It is a really good matchup, too, against the Jaguars. I say start him if you have him.
Smile, Noah Fant, big fan. I love Robert Tonyan this week. Actually stole this nugget from Adam Rank. In every game that Robert Tonyan played against the Detroit Lions last season, he scored a touchdown. We already said that Aaron Rodgers was going to play petty and he was going to be mad because he had 1 fantasy point and was not good in week 1. So Robert Tonyan is the easy answer here. All right, so those were our must starts, but let's go to our fantasy locks of the weeks. Lock it up, Rank. These guys are a lock for week 2.
I'm going to go back to Jalen Hurts and just be like, this is my lock. I just want this to be established. Where it is. Hey, everybody. I want this to be established that Jalen Hurts is a great fantasy quarterback and should be started every week.
Love it.
I think Nick Chubb is going to go off this week. I think a lock for 20-plus fantasy points. It is a great matchup, and he's Nick Chubb. He's awesome.
Okay, you guys ready? Mine's a little spicy. Actually, it's really not. I think both Alvin Kamara and Christian McCaffrey are going to have 18-plus fantasy points in today's matchup. Both their teams are facing off against one another, but we understand these offenses quite literally run through both of these guys. If they want to do anything on the ground, it's through Christian McCaffrey, it's through Alvin Kamara. And I think there's a scenario where a big game can have 2 big scores for 2 big fantasy running backs. We feel good about that?
Feeling good.
I love it. All right, this was NFL Fantasy Game Day. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you stick with us every single Sunday. We are taking you up to the minute of kickoff. We want to get you a fantasy championship, and we're armed with all the resources to do it. NFL football is coming on your screen in just a few minutes, and we're live. NFL Fantasy Game Day. Thanks so much for joining along, everyone. We'll see you next week.